Depressed people don't smile a whole lot, and that makes sense, right? Who wants to smile when you feel sad or depressed? But new research shows you may feel blue because you're frowning, not the other way around.
The expressions on our face help drive the emotions. And it's not just that, oh, yes, now I'm feeling a certain way, sad, so yes, I'm going to express it. No, it's a circular thing. Everything feeds back to the brain, and it's hard to feel an emotion unless you act it out, whether it be on your face or with your body or your voice. Emotions aren't sort of just floating around there in our brain in some ether. They have to be embodied.
That's Dr. Eric Finzi, a dermatologic surgeon in Washington, D.C., and author of The Face of Emotion, How Botox Affects Mood and Relationships. The book is an outgrowth of Finzi's 2 studies, showing that people with depression improve, often markedly, when their frown muscles are frozen with Botox. In fact, nearly a quarter of Botox recipients in the studies experienced complete remission of depression. So Finzi says that brings up a chicken and egg question. What comes first, emotion or its corresponding facial expression?
The way to look at it is that facial expressions have co-evolved with our emotions over millions of years. So they're intimately connected to our emotions, and they can help generate the emotions. There's actually a lot of evidence to show that if you do a simple thing like smile, you'll actually evaluate the short story you're reading more positively. Conversely, if you frown while you're looking at some picture of a famous celebrity, you'll think they're less famous. You'll have a more negative view on the world around you if you just happen to be frowning. And the other key point is that most of this is occurring in our emotional unconscious. So what you are aware of, your emotional conscious, is just a very small part of what's happening inside your brain at any time.
Finzi's studies have been replicated with similar results in Switzerland and Germany. But what you might find surprising is the site of the Botox injection. Most people associate sadness with a frowning mouth, but that's not the muscle that's frozen with Botox.
The injections, for all the studies to date, they've all been done between the eyebrows. So that's the primary muscle of frowning, is between the eyebrows. If you look at facial expressions, the negative emotions, anger, fear, and sadness, are all represented in contraction of this muscle between the eyebrows. So any one of those usually will involve that muscle. When you look at somebody whose muscle is really contracting up there, that sends a signal to your unconscious brain that something's not quite right. And it gets you a little bit perturbed, a little bit upset, as it's supposed to, because it's a signal from that person that maybe all is not well.
Researchers don't know the exact mechanism that makes this work, but Finzi says feedback loops could explain how facial expressions can influence how you think and feel.
The way to look at any muscle in the body is that in order for you to move a muscle, your brain has to send out a signal. Well, it turns out that for every signal it sends out, it gets one back, because the brain needs to be aware of what is the body doing. If you move your arm and lift something, your brain knows exactly where your hand is, just as it's lifting that glass, because it's getting a signal back from these receptors in your hand, which tell it, oh, okay, your hand just picked it up. So the same thing occurs with the muscles of facial expression, and I believe that the brain sort of reads your emotional temperature. So if you've been frowning all day, you're sending signals back to your brain, well, maybe things aren't so good. And if you've been laughing and smiling all day long, well, the brain gets the signal that, well, I guess life has been treating you well.
Some people have wondered if the Botox itself might be improving people's mood. But Finzi says there's no evidence of that. He says the dosages used are very small. For example, 20 to 40 times smaller than the dosage used to treat cerebral palsy.
It's important to remember that Botox is a drug, and half of its uses around the world have nothing to do with anything cosmetic, but are for medical conditions like spasms in the neck, or migraine headaches, or excessive sweating, Parkinson's disease, or cerebral palsy. So these are major diseases that all seem to have a window of opportunity for treatment using the muscle. And I believe that the muscles of facial expression are just somehow involved in the circuit of the brain. And what you're doing here is you're just interrupting one one part of that circuit. And so that pathway then gets damped down, and if you happen to have too much of the negative emotional pathway, you're going to quiet that down a bit with the Botox.
But what do depressed patients who've undergone this treatment say?
Here's one patient who gives her account. She says, my reaction was not dramatic, and it was not overnight. I went and did the follow-up. I took the same diagnostic that I'd taken at the outset of the study, and I was amazed at the difference in my scores. It was dramatic improvement. The reality is I was feeling lighter. It's almost like when you carry around a weight for a long time, you don't consciously realize you're carrying a weight until you set it down and you feel lighter.
Finzi says our facial expressions can impact other people just as profoundly. He relates the story of a husband and wife stuck in a negative emotional cycle. The wife was not depressed, but had what Finzi calls an agile frown. The husband's constant assumption she was angry with him prompted hundreds of arguments. But a Botox injection changed all that. When the wife insisted, no, I'm not angry, the husband began to believe her, and they got along much better.
It was a remarkable thing to realize that a simple change in one facial expression could actually affect how two people get along with each other.
All of us get into a blue funk now and then and may feel stuck in a bad mood for a day or so. It's probably not practical to get a Botox injection at times like that. But maybe all we have to do is soften our facial expressions, unfurrow our brows, and try a tentative smile. The world just might seem like a happier, friendlier place. Our writer this week is Polly Hansen. Our production director is Sean Waldron. I'm Nancy Benson.
Keep on smiling, baby, and I hope the world smiles with you.
Cooking in a more heart-healthy way can be as easy as using a heart-healthy oil like Mazola corn oil. In fact, according to a study published in the latest edition of the Journal of Clinical Lipidology, corn oil can significantly reduce both total and so-called bad LDL cholesterol and does it more effectively than extra virgin olive oil. Study co-author Dr. Constance J. Geiger, Ph.D. RDN of the University of Utah.
The study results showed corn oil lowered LDL cholesterol by nearly 11% compared to olive oil's 3.5% reduction. Corn oil's effectiveness is due in part to the natural cholesterol-blocking ability of plant sterols, which are naturally occurring in corn oil. In fact, corn oil contains 136 milligrams of plant sterol per tablespoon, while olive oil has just 30 milligrams.
These findings add to those from prior research supporting corn oil's positive heart health benefits and align with recommendations to replace saturated fats with unsaturated fats, such as those found in Mazola corn oil. For more information and delicious recipes, visit Mazola.com.
The results are in. For the treatment of nasal allergy symptoms, nothing is more effective than Nasacort. Nasacort Allergy 24-Hour is prescription-strength medicine that's scent and alcohol-free with no harsh taste. It's non-addictive and provides 24-hour relief of the worst nasal allergy symptoms, including congestion, with no prescription needed. And in a recent clinical study with Nasacort going nose-to-nose with Flonase, more people prefer Nasacort. For more information, visit Nasacort.com. Nasacort. Use as directed.